Welcome to the Bobby O Show. I've got a show today that I'm going to enjoy. You may not enjoy it, but I'm going to love it. And wearing my Yale sweatshirt, and everyone knows from the show I've done for many years that I'm a Yale undergraduate in Duke Law. That's why you saw all the Duke paraphernalia also. But today's show is about Yale basketball. I grew up in Shelton, Connecticut. I grew up watching Yale basketball. And I decided that because of all of the new trends and changes, some not for the better, I might add, in college basketball, I thought it'd be a good idea to do a historical perspective on basketball. And I'd focus on Yale basketball to get some of the fine players that Yale had in the late 60s, early 70s, and talk about what basketball was like at Yale, in the Ivy League, in the NCAA, at that point in time, and then do some of a juxtaposition of where we are today. I've got some tremendous guests with me, and they include Jim Morgan, Thatcher Shellaby, John Whiston, and Mike McLaren. Mike, we had some technical difficulties with him from Memphis, but he hopefully will join us. But those are the gentlemen I have today. We had a prep show yesterday when an hour felt like 2 minutes, and I hope we have half as much fun today in the real show as we did yesterday. Gentlemen, hello.
Hello.
Hi, folks.
Good to see you.
We're as soon as Mike can get on, we'll put him on. Jim, we're going to start with you and go from you to Thatcher and John. Just real briefly, a little bit about yourselves, and also a little bit about why it was you chose to play basketball, or more importantly, why you chose to be a student athlete at Yale. Jim, we'll start with you, my friend.
I grew up in Midwest, suburb outside of Chicago, played basketball, small Catholic high school. We were in a suburban Catholic conference, very good conference, good competition. Loved basketball, wanted to play basketball in college, and ended up being recruited by a number of schools, some really good schools, Davidson, Stanford, Northwestern, Duke. I actually had a visit with Duke. Vic Bubas was the coach back then. At some point in the process, Yale contacted me. There was an alumnus, actually a booster for the athletic program. His name was Bob Anderson. He lived in Chicago, and I guess he got wind of me. Mentioned my name referred my name to Coach Van Sissen, who was the coach at that time at Yale, and he reached out to me. I was invited to visit the campus, had a very good visit. And I was just after the Bill Bradley era. And that got an awful lot of attention. Ivy Leaguer, Final Four, led the NCAA tournament in scoring that year, and got so much attention. I guess that combination of Ivy League academics, Ivy League education, and playing Division I top flight basketball appealed to me. And so that was that's basically the basis for my decision to go to Yale, and I was looking forward to playing basketball.
Thank you very much, Jim. Thatcher, how about you next?
Yes, well, I played basketball in Southern California, Palos Verdes Estates, and we had a very good team. Went to the quarterfinals in California. And regarding Yale, I received the Yale Book Award from a faculty member at my high school, which kind of triggered my interest. But my parents always thought that the Ivy League was a good place to go. And I think they had it in the back of their mind. They didn't force me, but that seemed to be a good thing to do. So sight unseen, I headed back to New Haven. Another reason is that I could have gone to Princeton, but the Princeton team seemed to be really, really good. And I was hoping to be a starter or at least play a lot. And so happy I made that decision as well. As far as what I'm doing now, I'm living in Switzerland. And the reason I came over here was to play basketball. So it's been a thread throughout my life. Coming to Switzerland, playing professional basketball for a couple of years, and they found me a job teaching, my wife as well. And then I got into business, long story short, worked for a couple of international companies, worked for an NGO in the Himalayas, which was a fabulous encore career. And here I am with 4 granddaughters and a grandson on the way. So I'm a very lucky man. I'm very, very happy. I'm very happy to be joining you guys, seeing you guys again.
And by the way, Thatcher was a 2-time captain of the Yale basketball team. very unusual to have a two-time captain, and he was a captain his junior year. And obviously, the leadership abilities he exhibited in college have carried on through his life. We'll get to a little bit more later on. John, how about you, my friend?
Yeah, I'm originally from Casper, Wyoming, which probably no one has heard of. At that point, it was a small city out in the middle of the mountains and prairies in Wyoming, about 30,000 people. And Jim and Thatcher and Mike all came to Yale with skills. I came to Yale because I was 6'9". And so I was a bigger work in progress than either of those three guys. I came to Yale because I had grades, because I'd been recruited for academics, I suspect. But I did take a trip to Yale during my senior year. And when I got there, they sent me off to a room. And I was exhausted because I'd taken the red eye from Casper. And so I almost immediately went to bed, and the bed was 7 feet long. And I said, this is where I'm coming to school.
Now, I don't know if is Mike on the phone with you, Jim, or is he not connected?
No, I ended the conversation.
Okay, we'll come back to Mike McLaren. We'll come back to Mike McLaren when he can get back on. If not, we'll do another show with him. One of the things that attracted me to Yale, and I drove 25 minutes from Shelton, Connecticut to New Haven, but what attracted me to Yale in part was the fact that it is such a diverse university with people from all over the country. I had never met someone from Arkansas before, and I had a friend last name Davidson. So having you fellas come from all different parts of the country is one of the attractions of a national institution. I want to go to the following, because I mentioned the word student athletes, and I think that's a word that's lost today more so than it was in the past. I'd like to have each of you talk a little bit about the manner in which, yes, you came to play basketball. John was more academic, perhaps, from his approach rather than the basketball, but he did play a lot of basketball, and he was 6'9". But talk to me a little bit about how you got involved in the Yale community, because at Yale in those days wasn't a big basketball school like it is today. So what was it like coming from your backgrounds to get involved with the student body, half of which probably didn't even know what a basketball was? We'll start with Thatcher, please.
Well, yeah, coming to New Haven, I really didn't know what to expect. And so it took a while. I was there with, I went through actually a program that was run by William Sloan Coffin, who was a chaplain there. And he ran a week before we started our year. And I think Glenn Deschabert was at it as well. And they showed On the Waterfront as the movie to get us going. And that was a nice introduction. And then, of course, basketball was a key integrating factor. And then the residential colleges at Yale are fabulous. So you immediately fell in with guys that you got along with, that knew basketball, knew the subjects that you like. So it was, I'm probably looking at it with rose-colored glasses now with the perspective of time. But I got into it very quickly, and I think basketball, once again, was a key factor in integrating into the campus life.
You mentioned the Reverend William Sloan Coffin. When I went to Yale, I started in 1971. He was a big name, a big name. And you mentioned movies. I was in McLaren Hall as a freshman, which is on the old campus. And my window was right behind the auditorium where they had a lot of movies. So I was, as a freshman, watching a lot of movies I had never seen before. John, how about you? How was it for you to get involved in the Yale community from almost day one?
I arrived in September of 1966 as part of one of the very first classes that Yale had, where they really reached out for geographical distribution and economic class distribution. And it turned out that I fell into the basketball group, and it was people almost exclusively who were coming from a middle-class public school background. So that gave me a really solid safety net to deal with what was a huge surprise to me is that Casper, Wyoming is a small, rural, working class city. My dad worked in an oil refinery. So having a roommate whose father was vice president of AT&T, that was a shock. Meeting people who had gone to prep schools. My attitude was, what the hell is a prep school? It was a huge adjustment, but all for the good. All for the good.
I just want to make two comments, and Mike and now is join us, but just two quick comments. I had that same experience coming from Shelton High School because it was a middle-class community, known for my town for 25 years, had gone into Yale, and I was very intimidated by it. The second thing is, after we talked to Mike for a moment, it's very germane to me that you guys were on campus in the late 60s when there were the Black Panthers and all the activities in New Haven where there was student protests, whatever. I want to get into that in a moment, but let me first introduce Mike McLaren, whose name I got from Sandra Bullock to be on today's show. Mike, how you doing, sir? I'm sorry you had some trouble getting on there, but we all chipped in and paid your utility bill for you, so now you're on. Mike, tell us a little bit of background as to what you're doing, where you are, and why it was you chose to Yale. Then we're going to come back to some of the topics that we've been covering.
Well, I'm obviously not a techno guy, although I was on a Zoom all morning. I'm a lawyer in Memphis, Tennessee, and it's great to see all these guys. I see Jim probably yearly, but I'm here. I'm still practicing law, even at this advanced age, and working hard. And I'm on a cell phone now.
Well, at least you got on the show. And by the way, this is a typical Yale group because 3 of the people on here are lawyers. And so you just can't get away from lawyers. I don't know what we're going to do about that. We mentioned movies, and I just want to mention the fact that Mike, as I understand it, has been on some movies. I had hoped to put some of the videos on, but I couldn't get the copyright approvals, so I didn't put them on today. But Mike, you were on a couple of the John Grisham movies, right?
Yes, and I should have sent you the letter for things like this. MGM and Warner Brothers agreed to waive copyright.
Oh, really? You have that waiver?
I have that waiver in writing. A lawyer friend of mine wrote it. But they were doing auditions for the movie The Firm, and Tom Cruise, is about 5'5", and I went out there with a bunch of my buddies to audition, and it said, if you're a lawyer and can play basketball and look over 40. And as these guys know, I looked over 40 when I was playing at Yale. So I went out, and Tom Cruise saw me and said, I want everybody like you or shorter. And Thatcher and John and I are used to playing with a short player. So it was no big deal for me to play with a guy 5'5". Haven't played with Jimmy for 3 years. But I got the part. I'm in this opening scene. I'm the very first guy you see. And then I went on and was in 7 more movies in about 5 years.
I recognize Mike McLaren. I recognize Mike, but who's the guy holding the basketball? I don't recognize him.
He's the 5'5" guy.
That's Tom Cruise. Okay.
Yeah, he's the 5'5".
That's a great shot. That's a great shot. While we're showing some pictures, why don't we put on some of the other pictures, Candy and my director? Why don't we put some of the other pictures we have on? And I'll identify who the people are. Okay, who's shooting the ball right there?
That'd be me, I think. Well, although I don't remember being that young.
Okay, and that's me as John. Okay. Next, that's Thatcher with Coach Joe Van Sissen. Joe Van Sissen was the Yale coach for many, many years from Bridgeport, Connecticut, and he actually went to high school at Bassick High School in Bridgeport with my mother. That's a great shot, Thatcher.
You like the Converse, the hard rubber Converse, Chuck Taylor Converse.
Well,
when
you talk about the change in basketball from then to now, look at the shorts that the guys are wearing versus what they wear now. Now, those of you who are real basketball fans would know that the fellow shooting the basketball is Pete Maravich, who is one of the greatest scorers in college basketball history, and he did not have the 3-point shot to get a lot of points, and he still scored over 3,500 some odd points. And he also played in the NBA. And one of the most famous Yale basketball games, which we'll get to in a few moments, was the victory by Yale in 1969, I think it was,
Yep.
with Yale beating Pete Maravich and LSU in the Rainbow Classic. We'll come back to in a few moments about that next. Caitlin Clark, John, and who's behind Caitlin in the Yale uniform?
Yeah, I'm retired law professor at the University of Iowa, so I had the privilege of watching Caitlin Clark maybe 40 times while she played at Iowa the last few years. And that's Mike McLaren, who couldn't cover her.
Well, the only person who can cover is probably the referee in the UConn Iowa game. But just real quickly, because women's basketball has just developed so nicely. Talk a little about what you observed in Caitlin Clark as a basketball player.
Well, we've had season tickets for 25 years. And during the Caitlin Clark era, the season tickets sold out. They sold 15,000 season tickets. And I couldn't get handicap parking anymore. I need to talk to a lawyer about that. And the excitement, the buzz in Carver Hawkeye Arena here in Iowa City was just phenomenal. And you saw that spread all over the country. We actually went and saw the Hawkeyes play in the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16 and the Final Four and the final game against South Carolina. And I just think the excitement around women's college basketball, and I suspect pros, is skyrocketing.
One of the games that was a big game at Yale when I was a kid was the Yale-UConn game. UConn was a big rival. And there's one year that Yale, I think it was 1968 or 69, that Yale beat UConn something on the order of 89 to 70, a big score. Talk to me a little about, any of you fellas, about the Yale-UConn rivalry. And I mentioned that because UConn has refused to play Yale for many, many years. Good reason or bad, partly because I think they were a little bit afraid of Yale, quite frankly. But anyone want to comment about the Yale-UConn rivalry, whether it was a big game or not a big game? Jim?
Yeah. I played over my career. I played against UConn 4 times. We played against them every season, and then we happened to run into them my senior year, McLaren's junior year, in a tournament down in Louisiana. And over that 4-year period, we split with them. I tell people, when I'm talking about my career or playing basketball in college, I always talk about the fact that we beat we split with UConn in 4 games, and we beat Syracuse in another game. So playing the Big East teams, we were 3-2, which I think was pretty impressive for an Ivy League school. Of course, UConn and Syracuse might not have been the same teams they were back then, but I don't.
A win is a win. A win is a win.
That.
You know, and when you played in the Ivy League, Princeton and Penn controlled the league. They were the 2 best teams.
Columbia.
And Columbia was very good also. But there was a game, I believe, and Princeton one year had 2 first-round draft choices. And Thatcher, I think you were the one who mentioned to me that one of your highlights of your career playing basketball at Yale was the Yale-Princeton game. You want to talk about that one?
Sure. Yeah, that was a highlight, along with the LSU game, which you're going to get to. We beat Princeton in 1970, February, on my birthday, which was just a coincidence, of course. But the varsity hadn't beaten Princeton for 6 or 7 years, since Bradley was a sophomore, I guess. We had freshman team there, and as freshmen we beat them for some reason. But we'd been, looking at Petrie and Hummer and the other guys they had on the team. And I remember the week or 2 before, I was running the stairs after practice, and I would say, beat Princeton, beat Princeton, beat Princeton. And I don't know if I had anything to do with it, but we did beat them. And then I went back to the residential college, and James Taylor was playing in our dining room. So it was just a fabulous experience. The only other thing is my teammate from California, in Palos Verdes, and a good friend of mine was playing for Princeton as well. So there was a sweet, very sweet feeling to that victory. Very much a highlight for me.
Well, speaking of sweet baby James Taylor, can you tell us a little bit about how it was? This is 1970 that James Taylor was there. Was Toad's place open at that point in time in New Haven?
Sure.
It was at that time. Did he play at Toad's that day, or did he just have to be in your?
No, he I don't know if he played at Toad's, but he played at our. I guess someone must have known him from school or something, and invited him there to play. Just him and his guitar, and maybe I'm guessing 100 of us. 150 maybe maximum overflow, and it was just a fabulous concert, intimate concert, and he was very popular. At least I really liked his songs at that time, so it was a wonderful day.
Well, that's the experience. When I was at Yale, we didn't have James Taylor, but my Master Beekman Cannon, who was heir to the Beekman Cannon for the Cannon Towel Throne, threw us as a graduation present an opera in Jonathan Edwards College. That was what we had. Being from Shelton, Connecticut, I had never been to an opera before. I didn't know what it was all about. But in any event, Mike, this one might be for you. In going through your rosters, and I did a lot of prep. And by the way, we are going to do another show because there's a lot more to talk about. But if anyone has read Doonesbury, BD, Brian Dowling, Brian Dowling may be one of, even though Calvin Hill's a Yale grad, and we had Don Scholander, the swimmer, and a lot of great players. We might have our best athlete ever at Yale, might be Brian Dowling, who played tennis, played football with the Calvin Hill era, but he also played on the Yale basketball team. Mike, how about some stories about that at all?
He did, but I missed him. He just played on a freshman team. I think he never played. I don't think he played on the varsity, did he?
He came out preseason,
Right.
My junior year.
That's right.
Both he and Calvin Hill were there briefly. My suspicion is that their agents called them up and said, "What the hell are you thinking? You're going to go to the NFL draft and you're going to risk your knees or your ankles playing Yale basketball? Are you nuts?" And so they didn't play any further.
But it was
I
just
remember playing against him on the 5th floor, which you guys all remember.
Okay.
5th floor playing Whitney. And I didn't know who he was. It was my freshman year. And I thought, wow, that guy's really good. Who is that guy? And everybody looked at me like I was nuts, not knowing who Brian Dowling was.
I remember that very well. He came out, as John said, our junior year. He was a senior and practiced with us, I guess, at least once or twice, maybe 3 times. I don't recall exactly. And he was obviously a very good athlete. One of those guys that star quality like Mike McLaren, right? He was really, really, really good, smooth, could jump, everything else. And I think he decided not to join the team because he knew that Jim Morgan was going to outshoot him. So I think that's why he bowed out. And that's why I was captain junior year. We didn't have any seniors on the team. And so that was another highlight to go 50-50. I think it was John and Jim our junior year with no seniors on the team.
The best athlete.
Just a follow-up comment, because my senior year, I was the only senior on the team. And it's not necessarily getting into it, but that tended to be a pattern.
But you counted for 2. You counted
sorry?
for 2, Jim.
Well, it was the guys I played freshman basketball with. I wish some of them had continued into senior year. It was a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
I mean, seeing only 3 of you guys seniors when I was a junior, and then ending up the only senior in my last year in college, it was something that I sort of regret. I wish those guys had hung around, and I wish the program had encouraged them to hang around and continue playing.
Well,
that's one of the differences between Ivy League basketball even today and all the rest of the leagues is that we could put together a good team that could play competitively against anybody in the country, just like Yale and Princeton can today. But there were no athletic scholarships. And so if someone decided that they would much rather put their efforts into going to being prepared for law school or singing with the Whiffenpoofs, they can do that. And so there was a lot more movement in the roster than what you would see in the ordinary conference.
And to be honest, the academics was very challenging at Yale. You had to work hard if you wanted to do well. We only have 3 minutes left, so we're going to do another show coming on along the way. But I do want to mention one of the all-time great Yale games, probably the third best all-time, now that we have 2 wins in the NCAA tournament. And that's the wonderful Yale victory at the Rainbow Classic in 1969, I think was the right year. And Jim Morgan, all humility aside, scored 35 points that game, outscoring Pete Maravich. And Jim, I'd like you to give us a couple of minutes of your memories of that game. And when we do our next show, we'll give Mike more time because he really didn't get enough airtime for us. I think Thatcher probably ruined your power just so you get more time over you. But Jim, give us a little bit of a background of the Rainbow Classic.
Well, I'm sure the 4 of us probably remember it as the most memorable game in our careers. I can't imagine one that anyone would top that. We all played. We all played a lot in that game. We were playing against the best, in my opinion, the best college basketball player, maybe he and Bradley of all time. And we started out. They said in the newspaper that if the local high school team was in the tournament, we'd have been rated 9th as opposed to 8th, which was the number of teams in the tournament. There were some great teams there, but our ultimate goal was to try to play against LSU.
And you beat him. Yeah. Jim, we only have, unfortunately, a minute left. And so we're going to do another show, I promise. But here's what I want to say. These are classy gentlemen who I've become friends with, I think, in like 24 hours. But with all the NIL activity, with the transfer portals, these guys who are leaving Duke or any school after a year or two, what they don't have is the 4 years that you guys had together where you got to learn and grow and live together. And Mike wrote a great comment to me, and I got his permission to read this, and I will read this to end the show. And he wrote this to all of you fellows, and I was honored to be invited to see this comment. He said, "Hey, you guys, regardless of how this goes tomorrow, great to see you and talk today. Wow, you don't know this and probably don't even recognize this, but I held you in such esteem, and it has just grown as we all got old, or not older, but old. I never really understand you exactly, John, but I always admired you. Thatcher, you were a natural leader, and I've seen a lot of near-miss leaders. Jimmy, enough said about us. You guys are great, Mike." That kind of message, I was moved by that, guys, and I hope that if you're in Connecticut to see a Yale game or whatever, or you want to come over our house, we have plenty of room to visit, whatever. I'd like to talk to you guys one-on-one because you were great guys, and you taught me a lot. You really taught me a lot in the last couple of days. So thank you so very much from the bottom of my heart. We'll have you back again. This is Bob Potster. Thanks, folks. This is The Bobby O Show.